Hey everybody, welcome to 2026. This is the first episode of 2026 with Spin Legal, and this is episode 99 of all of our Spin Legals, and that means next week's episode is number 100. So maybe we should have some giveaways next week. What do you think?
That'd be good. Like 99 dead baboons. That was a song that was brought up.
I mean 100 dead baboons. Actually, 99 red balloons is what you were talking about. Yeah, okay.
Actually, that was a takeoff. It was a one of those.
Yeah, well, I prefer the original. Okay, so if you need to contact Invictus Legal, you can do so on 905-688-5598 or email Angela through Angela@weareinvictus.legal or me using peter@weareinvictus.legal, or our website is weareinvictus.legal. There we go. Okay, so the topic today is rent increases and the annual, what do you call it? The annual rent increase, interest on deposits.
Yeah.
Right. So let's talk about rent increases. First of all, one of the key factors about rent increases here in Ontario, we have an annual guideline increase. And typically what happens is the annual guideline increase is announced in October of every year, September or October of every year, and it is set by the Ontario government through one of the many mechanisms that they've got.
Yeah,
right?
It's set by the Lieutenant Governor and Council.
Sorry?
Set by the Lieutenant Governor and Council every year, and it's based on the Bank of Canada.
Yeah. Okay, so it's published every year on the Government of Canada website, on the Ontario.ca website, and you can go look it up. All right, so note that annual guideline increase is different from an above guideline increase. An above guideline increase is something that has to be applied for through the landlord and tenant board, and would take some time to be approved. So let's talk about just normal rental increases here. And what has to happen is there has to be 90 days written notice using the N1 form.
For example, the first time you want to increase the rent, you want to increase it by the guideline amount, you have to wait 12 months, at least 12 months after the anniversary of the tenancy.
And if a tenant, even though the new annual guideline increase is published in September or October of the year, so the last one would have been September or October of 2025. If you moved into the unit in August 1st, 2025, the first time at which your landlord can apply the increase is on the first anniversary of the commencement of the rental agreement. There are some which are now a bit free floating, and often they do them at the beginning of the year now, because what happened during COVID, we all know that 2021 had a 0% increase. So it essentially reset the clock, and it meant that for many of those earlier tenancies, the annual rental increase applies really the 1st of January, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And most rental properties are covered under this, but not all rental properties. For example, any rental property that's new and has first been started to be rented out and has never been used before as a residential rental, as of November 15th, 2018.
Yeah.
And so if there's anything that was built since then, they are not covered by 2.1% increase that were.
And it is a new build, not the first time it's ever been rented. So my house, it's never been rented, or at least I don't know it's ever been rented, and I decided to rent it out because the house was built in 1920. I couldn't rent it out.
It was a new unit in the basement, a new rental unit in the basement. That's you've never.
Yeah. Okay. New rental unit in the basement. Theoretically, I can had to do
Yeah.
that, the new rules. Yeah.
And this was supposed to be set so that more housing will be built. And are we seeing a whole lot of housing built since 2018?
Well, that's
Nada.
a political issue, Angela.
Okay. Nada. Well, we
That's a
do see some
political issue.
condos being built
Yeah.
and a few luxury rentals, but I don't see enough affordable rentals.
Yeah.
And
And so at the end of the day, you've got an annual guideline increase, and typically, as I said, that comes out in September, October, and is made available to the public. And hey, if you're a tenant, you probably don't have to go any further than your tenant Facebook group to find out what the annual guideline increase is. If you're a landlord, you probably don't have to go any further than your Facebook landlord Facebook group to find out what the annual increase is.
or you can get your facts by going online
Yeah.
to the Ministry of Housing website, where it'll show under for the residential tenancies.
And hey, you know what, Angela? I don't know what the annual guideline increase was for last year because I haven't looked it up.
Actually, for this year, it's 2.1%.
I knew it had gone down, but I didn't know exactly what the amount was.
Last year was 2.5.
Yeah, I knew the prior year was 2.5.
Yeah.
I knew
And
this year was lower.
inflation has gone down a bit, and of course, the Bank of Canada, like when they stayed or they kept their rates steady, you know that we're not going to go anywhere else. So
Yeah.
that was a sign.
Well, and actually, here's the thing. So whilst the annual rate of inflation was above 2.5%, in fact, actually there was many, to have actually been said at 2.5% for the last 2 or 3 years was probably good for the tenants, because even though the rate of inflation was 6, 7, 8% sometimes.
And I think they were trying to be careful. I think that because of the COVID and because of the tendency, they tried to be careful with. They didn't want to go too far. But when you don't have a coverage under the rent controls, like for example, when you don't have it, you move in August, and you pay say $2,000 for a 2-bedroom apartment, and then 12 months later, they can rent it. They can increase the rent up to whatever they want.
Well, at the end of the day, that only applies if you're
going to probably get a higher rent increase than what is normally permitted for rent-controlled units. But the thing is, we're also finding that the average rental housing prices are going up with it a lot. So we're having some issues with affordable housing as a result. Not only of that, but there's other pressures too that put on that.
Yeah, and exactly. And so at the end of the day, when it comes down to this, the rental situation, the market prices in any area is governed by a whole lot of different issues, and the annual percentage increase is only one determining factor. And but again,
Trudeau did not set the rents up or the housing prices.
Well, if I leave my apartment and you, as my landlord, rent it out to a new person, I may have been living there for 15 years, so I've been paying only $1,162.94. Over the last year, and with the 2.1%, it goes up a little bit. But hey, I still pay well under the guideline. Well under the
move out. Then I go in and I look around and see what similar sized apartments in that neighborhood is.
Yeah,
and then I'll say, okay, maybe that'll go for about say 1,500 or 1,600.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I will advertise it.
Yeah, exactly. So when I leave my rental unit, you as a landlord are feel free to actually put it to market rent anyway.
Yeah, and that's for any rentals, because that's what's called vacancy decontrol.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and at the end of the day, let's say that the average rental in the area was 1,600 and 1,625, and you put it up to 1,700 or even 1,800, you'd be well within your rights to do so.
Yeah, you can do it and see if you can get tenants, and if somebody's going to grab it, they'll grab it.
Yeah, and on the other hand, if the normal markets, is the same, you 1,500, you put it up to 1,700, and there are no takers. I guess that you as a landlord, after 2 or 3 months, be going, okay, I'm not going to put it at 1,700, maybe 1,600. See if I get some bites at this. Right, and
Very
then you
hard to do that though, because what generally happens is, if you keep the market rents high, it's not that people will not rent from you. What they will do is they'll find roommates and pair up.
Yeah.
Then you get situations, you get 4 or 5 people living in a 2-bedroom house. We have to be really, really careful with the price of housing, because housing is not a commodity. Housing is a necessity.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to live somewhere.
And actually, it's important to know that as the rent can only be increased one time within any 12-month period, and that's true whether you are on the old rental scheme or the new rental scheme. The new rental scheme being that you can increase it by whatever amount you feel free to be the new market rent. You can only increase it once per year. If you increase more than once per year, the tenant can take you to the tribunal.
Yeah, exactly. They have to have some predictability.
Yeah.
Right? And even under the new system, there is some predictability, but maybe not as much as it was under the rent control system.
And okay, on the rent control system, you have to use the 90 days written notice using the N1 form. Under the new system, I'm not sure that you necessarily have to use an N1 form.
You have to use an N2, I think.
Yeah, there's a different form, but again, there's not a,
because not subject to rent controls. Yeah. But this is the percentage that we're increasing. Your rent was such and such, and now it is such and such.
But you still have to give the relevant number of days notice.
Yeah, still a 90-day notice. So it's like everything else. We've had people call the office. They live in this brand new tower that's just been built. Okay? And they said when they moved in, they were paying $1,500, and now all of a sudden the landlord wants to charge them $2,300 a month after the year they lived there. And sadly, we can't do anything about it. Sometimes the tenant maybe negotiate with the landlord, see if they can reduce it a bit, but this is what one of the problems is with housing. And it's going to be a problem forevermore. Like, they put housing on the stock market essentially with the real estate investment trusts. Now they're trying to do that with food, but that's another thing.
That's not part of this.
Yeah. But basically, when we're dealing with that, this tells you what you have. You just have to know what they're doing and how much it is. A landlord who does that extremely and says, like, you were paying $1,500 and then decides you're going to be paying $4,500, that's a little bit too much. He obviously wants you to leave, and move. See if they can get anybody else in at $4,500. So, I mean, you have to, it becomes a little bit more of a, landlords say it's more equal, but maybe not. But this is one of the situations that has arisen. And why they're doing this is because they want to encourage people to build, encourage new landlords, people to build basement units, that sort of thing in their homes. That sort of thing. And they are actually inviting people into different cities, and they're actually financing them. You can get up to $80,000 in St. Catharines, for example, to build in a legal basement unit, and rent it out to people. So it's a very, so people, cities and that are trying to work with that, and they're getting money from the province to help them.
The ADUs, as you were just describing them, additional units, it depends upon the city, because, for example, St. Catharines gives 80,000, Niagara Falls gives you a big fat zero.
Oh, Niagara Falls is pretty stingy, I hear.
Well, I think the challenge with Niagara Falls is that they believe that if you set up an ADU, you will probably turn it into an Airbnb and therefore break the bylaw for Niagara Falls.
Yeah, but I could still do that, St. Catharines too.
Well, that's the whole point about these ADUs. They can be used for, and if but again, any city that you make them in,
mm-hmm.
you still have to apply by whatever rules.
If I had the money, like I would do that, and I would probably use it for family though. Family.
Yeah, but again, and and if you were to do it in Thorold or in Guelph, you would actually have to register with the local city, your rental unit with the local city, in order that they. Sorry, not Guelph. I mean, Waterloo, Kitchener-Waterloo. Thorold and Kitchener-Waterloo. You'd have to register it with the city. Otherwise, you'd be having an illegal rental unit, and you could be.
Brampton just did it too, and they also increased their fines.
Yeah, and you could suffer daily fines for illegal rental units. Okay, so putting that aside, when it comes down to it was another question. We talked about 90 days written notice, and we talked about on the anniversary of the commencement of the rental agreement.
And there's also an option too, where a tenant and a landlord can agree to an above guideline rental increase.
They can.
Yeah. For example, the landlord says, "Hey, I want to build a carport, and then I want to put up a roof garden. I want to put up a few things that would be good amenities for the tenants to enjoy.
Yep.
Right? That weren't there before, and the tenant can enjoy it. So, and then I'll have a back deck, that sort of thing, and you can go barbecue, that sort of thing." And he says, "But this is going to cost me so much." So the tenant could agree to an above guideline increase.
Oh yeah. Okay. So talking about going back to the original question about increases. So there's 90 days notice, and it's on the anniversary of the commencement of the rental increase. But there are situations whereby there could be improper notice, and that the tenant has a right to take the landlord to the board for improper notice.
Yeah, like say you lived there for 8 months. You've always been paying $1,800. You lived there for 8 months, and all of a sudden, before your eighth month, the landlord decides to serve you with a notice that they're going to start you at in September, like 1 month, that you're going to be paying 2.1%, okay, or whatever the guideline increase is. Okay, but it's not the 12 months. You're not at the 12-month mark.
The 12-month anniversary.
Until the 12th month.
Yeah.
And if they try to pay you or try to hassle you about it, yes, you can go to the board, or if you start paying it, or if you pay an illegal increase, that say if you didn't know what the guideline increase is, but the landlord tells you, oh, it's 3%, so you got to get a 3% increase. And you pay that for a little while and say, hey, this is not right. I didn't ask for this. And then you find out what the increase is, only 2.1%. Then you can go back and file with the board and say, look, I want that money back. You could do that.
Yeah. And with improper notice, there's rules about that. So obviously you need to go check out what the rules are before actually making an application for such a...
And landlords need to be very careful with this sort of thing. I've assisted them with things. We've assisted them with above guideline increases. We've also worked with tenant groups for above guideline increases.
Yeah.
Because we want to make sure that if there's something in there, it has to be proper. Above guideline increases cannot be used to make up for poor maintenance work or for make up for maintenance work that you're catching up on.
Yeah.
Like you can't get a dilapidated old building and then try to refresh it and put all the maintenance and fix everything and say, now it's for above guideline increase. No, it has to be something that's capital improvements.
Yeah. And we'll talk about
what's the differences between that and what what maintenance is. There's different things, and they're very clearly written in the Act.
Yeah, and I think we can talk about above guideline increases at another time, because that is a topic in and of itself, which is immense.
Yeah, it's a huge topic.
It's a huge topic and can easily take up at one show. Even looking at just the landlord rules about above guideline increases could take one show.
Yeah, and then a tenant fight about how a tenant can defend themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
How a tenant can kind of sniff out and know that an above guideline increase is coming. There's lots of ways that they can predict that.
Okay, let's move on to the other half of this particular one, is interest on the rental deposit. Tell me about that.
When you moved in, you paid first and last month's rent. Okay, so the landlord has to hold your last month's rent in trust. Okay, so you paid $1,800, 18 months, $1,800 for first month, $1,800 for last month. So whenever there's a rent increase, you need to top it up with what the new rent is, so that it goes up to, say, $1,857. Okay, and then you have to give $57 to do a top up.
But again, okay, who's paying who on that?
Just a top up for the last month's rent, and then the increases, they have to pay the increase. So if the year's rental guideline increase, the average guideline increase is 2.1%, you have to add 2.1% for that year.
Okay, so I'm just going to ask because that
belongs to the tenant.
I just want to make sure that everybody's clear about who pays what, right? Yeah. So basically, there is a 2.1% increase, and you were just paying $1,000 this month, and now the 2.1% increase means that you would be faced with an extra $21 per month to be paid on your rent. Is it so? When I pay who pays the rental deposit?
The rental deposit, the $21 goes. You have to pay the extra $21 for the landlord hold and trust.
From the tenant to the landlord.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And while the tenant still lives there, interest has to be paid on that last month's rent. The interest belongs to the tenant. The landlord has to pay that, and that has to be paid at the last month.
Yeah.
So if you've been living there for 10 years, you got to go through all these. Make sure you pay the rent increase every year, the interest every year to the tenant.
But again, essentially, so what?
A nice application where you're going to have to pay all of it.
So essentially, when in each year, essentially when you get your rent increase on there, you'll get a notice on your M1, and you can work out that you've got this year you've got $27.95 to pay in additional rent.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So now you would pay in terms of the next payment that you make to your landlord includes that additional $29.61 and includes $29.61 for rental deposit.
Yeah, exactly. And this is what a lot of people don't understand, that landlords are allowed to do that because this is first and last month's rent.
Yeah.
Okay, for your residential unit. Because at the end of the term, your last month rent just has to equal to what the rent you're paying.
Okay, so next thing on yeah, okay, that's fine. I think that's clear. So the tenant has to pay the interest on the rental deposit, and the
landlord has to pay the interest on the rental deposit. The tenant pays the rental deposit.
Yeah. Sorry. Yes. Oh, sorry. So so basically must be paid to the tenant on the every 12 months from the rent deposit date.
The interest must be paid back to the tenant every 12 months.
Yeah.
Many landlords, and I know a lot of landlords are negligent, but when they move, just pay them the interest back or deduct it off their last month's rent or after their second last month's rent or something. to do something to be able to get the tenant back his deposits, because the tenant can go back and ask for it.
How many years can the tenant ask for? So if you've been there 15 years, how many years can he ask for? All 15?
Generally, before Bill 184, they were able to ask as many years as they wanted to. But now you can only go back a year.
Okay. So
if you started paying an illegal increase, and you kept paying it, and you didn't raise an issue with it within the year, that's going to be a problem for you because you won't be able to claim it back. But you could claim it back and say, hey, wait a minute here. I found out that I've got the guideline increase is 2.1%, not 3.5% like you were telling me. You lied to me, landlord. Yes, the tenant can go back and get it back.
Yeah, but at that point when he discovers that he's been lied to for 1 year, for one year period,
have to file with the board and they can get that back.
But again, we were talking about interest on rental deposit,
and the interest too is also something that must be paid too. So if it doesn't get paid, the tenant can get that.
And this and obviously the point being is that as a the interest is a complicated matter.
It's a complicated matter, and I've had to go through one case I had well before Bill 184 got in. There was 15 years of unpaid interest, and I went through every year of unpaid interest. And
but again, the Ontario Standard Lease has a box in it that says interest is paid on the rental deposit. Yes or no?
Yeah, it does say that.
And if you check no,
no, I don't think there's an interest paid on. Is there? On that,
there is a slot on the standard.
Yeah, but one thing I do know that they have to pay the interest on the rental deposit.
Yeah,
you have to notify them, but it doesn't state how much because that goes with the guideline increase.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay.
It used to be 6%. Our rent increases every year used to be 6%.
Wow.
Under the old Landlord Tenant Act.
Okay. That's quite a high increase.
But then again, our rents were not unreasonable. We lived in a time when rents, like I was renting a place for $325 for a 2-bedroom apartment. Yeah. So paying 6% of that every year was fine.
Okay, so there are two options, I believe, when a landlord, with payment options for rental deposit interest. One is that they can pay the interest directly to the tenants, or secondly, they can apply the interest to increase the deposit or top it up so that it matches the current rent amount. So if you were charging, if the rent was if your rent was say $1,600 and you were putting it up, and I'm just using it irrespective of whether it's correct on the current value, I'm putting the rent up by $50. So essentially, when you're putting the rent up by $50, you would actually have to add $50 to the.
That's the way to do it. I always tell the landlord that's the easiest way to do it, because otherwise they get into big squabbles, and write a letter to your tenant to let them know that you're doing this.
So essentially, when you've got let's say $1,000 that you put on there, because that was what the rent was back when you first started renting this place, and you've added the additional interest into the tenant's account. Essentially, now when you've 15 years later, you end up with an amount which might be which will be the equivalent of the current rent, won't it? So now so many years later, you're paying $1,862.97, and when it so it's $1,862.97 that you give back to the tenant on last month's rent.
Yeah, exactly. So that makes sure that you're just giving them back the so the tenant will, like, they could either stay there You know, sometimes they'll stay the last month and for free, okay, because you got the last month's rent. Or if they're leaving early, or if there's something going on where you both agree that the tenant's going to go, you do it in 11 and they're going, then you just give the tenant back their last month's rent.
Yeah. I was going to say, for many landlords, the only time they're going to actually be out of pocket is at the point at which the tenant leaves early, because most people don't, leave
Yeah,
at the
most
end of the
don't
tenancy.
leave early. Sometimes, most of the time, you have a hard time getting a lot of them out.
I was going to say, yeah, exactly. Exactly the point, right? Okay, so is there a limit? Is there a deposit limit for last month's rent?
Deposit limit, it has to be equal to the amount of rent. Like, for example, if you come in and they say, okay, we want you to pay first and last month's rent, the last month's rent is equal to the first month's rent.
Yeah.
You cannot ask for more. You do not have a right to do a damage deposit, or what some people are putting in as a pet deposit, things like that. You can't do that in Ontario. I know they can do it in some other provinces, but they can't do it here.
And it's the same also true about that, is that what we cannot do, what nobody is permitted to do, is to do it as, you've got to pay first month and 2 months of last month's rent. That's illegal.
Mm-hmm.
Although that said, there are landlords that are doing that today.
Yeah, there are. Yeah, and this is one of the things that would be.
Yeah. Okay. One thing that I would say to both, whether you're a landlord or a tenant in this situation, keep records, right?
Yeah.
Keep records about what you've paid, what the rent is on the annual percentage increase on the rent. Keep all your rent stubs in each year.
Yeah.
Because if you ever enter into a dispute with your landlord, that's going to be essential.
Yep, exactly. The landlord tenant board wants to see it. They want to have proof that you've actually paid the rent when the landlord says that you didn't pay any rent.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you got a bit, I got them all the e-transfers. They've been all accepted and deposited. Okay, and then they know that, and you also have a copy of your lease, everything else, and you're following everything perfectly. Okay, and if your landlord's saying that you didn't pay everything, then they would have to prove with their own information, for example, that they did a rent increase, but you didn't pay the rent increase, for example.
Yeah. And for example, if you're, again, whichever way, whether you're a tenant or a landlord, keep those N1 forms as a part and parcel of the record, because at the end of the day, if there's ever an argument about rent, then you need those records. The last thing you need to do is come to the landlord and tenant board, and the adjudicator says, and Miss Browne, can I have a look at, have you supplied the board with the evidence of the rental increase that you applied to the tenant this year?
Yeah, and you have to show them. It has to be on board approved forms.
Yeah.
Okay? With the new legislation they just put in with Bill 60, all these forms have to be board approved forms. They cannot be handwritten and thrown at you.
Oh, so my text message, your text message to me is not legal.
It's not sufficient.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that are going on with Bill 60, which I'm going to go into some detail at some point.
We'll cover Bill 60 at a certain point, that's for sure. And that brings a lot of changes to the landlord and tenant board, but it also brings a lot of changes to other areas, because one of the impacts of Bill 60 was to try to make house building easier. So there's a number of, and I'm going to look at it in terms of the Municipal Act, the Building Code Act, Fire Code Act, etc., because there's quite a few changes in Bill 60.
Let them cut corners so they can build as much as they want, which is not going to cut at all the pricing.
Mm.
And this is something I've always been very critical of. What they need to do is they need to have some nonprofit housing.
Okay, so moving
nonprofit or rent geared income nonprofit or whatever, it has to be some nonprofit competition.
Okay, moving on to another one. If as a tenant you don't receive interest, you and the interest is due to be paid to you, you can deduct the amount from your rent.
Yep, that's true.
So on January the 1st, if you were supposed to be paid $19.67 interest, and the landlord didn't pay it on February the 1st, you can deduct the $19.67 interest.
Yeah, as long as you're letting your landlord know that that's why you're deducting that amount.
Yes. Be very, very clear as to why.
To this amount.
Yeah. Why you're deducting this amount.
Yeah, so that the landlord isn't going to start screaming at you and throwing things at you.
And the typical thing is they'll throw you an N4 for $19.67 missing rent.
Not unheard of.
Yeah, absolutely, it's not unheard of.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's one of these things we see very often. Marching into your office and say, "I'm gonna get them out for $19.64."
Yeah, I've seen that. The landlord says, "I gotta get him out. I've got to get him out," because like the tenant pays the rent on time, but they're careful about these things. They'll deduct the interest and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And they come in here freaking out because they want to get the tenant out. And the thing is, you can't get them out on non-payment. You have to get them out if there's something else.
Yeah.
Right?
And the whole point is non-payment of the deposit is not something that the landlord and tenant board is going to evict the tenant.
Right. Exactly.
So long as you only make one payment, right?
Yeah. It's just that you have to be very careful. Like the landlord tenant board will help you if you definitely are in arrears of rent. They definitely will help you.
Yeah.
Hey, but if you're not in arrears of rent, if your tenant's paying the rent all the time, you can't kick them out for non-payment of rent.
Yeah.
Find another reason.
Absolutely, and that's the way it should be, because the law is there for for non-payment of rent. It's part of a contract. You get a place to live for the payment of the rental amount. That's part of normal contract that you get in a landlord and tenant situation. But you don't pay the rent, then you can certainly be in problem. Now, one of the things ultimately, if the rental deposit isn't paid, a tenant can file a complaint with the landlord and tenant board for an order or rent abatement amount. I've seen it happen, but normally, well, I would have to say, based upon something I saw recently, the adjudicator actually would send that off to a mediation, saying go mediate it. It's
sort of.
Yeah, sort it out.
There's $21.14 dispute.
Yeah. Go mediate it. There's no reason for you to be arguing about this amount of money. It's a standard contract. It's a standard amount. Agree that you either did pay it or didn't pay it, and be done with it, right?
Yeah.
And that I think would be the average adjudicator in this situation is going to pretty well tell you to do it that way.
Yeah, and they've been pretty good. It's on the extremes when they will make an order, because I remember doing one that was 15 years, no interest payment. There are a few other things too, but the no interest payment, we added it up each year after year, took the same each year's guideline increase, put everything together, and I think it even went into some of the old guideline increases. But it was very, very interesting.
Well, actually, the thing is, if you go look on the Ontario website where the guideline increases are published, they actually have about 15 years at least of guideline increases.
Yeah, exactly.
Published on that site.
Yeah, but I've had this like the Landlord and Tenant Board has been open since 1998 under the Ontario Rental Housing Tribunal.
Yeah.
And then it moved up into the Ontario Landlord and Tenant Board in 2007.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Practiced at both.
So is there anything else in terms of both both rental increases and interest on rental deposits that we need to be talking about?
Well, if you're a landlord out there, try to be fair in terms of sitting tenants, particularly if your unit is non-rent controlled. Try to be fair with the tenant. Like, don't decide that you're going to suddenly jack the rent up to like extreme amounts so that you can get the tenant out. Because there are some people who are facing that.
Yeah.
Be reasonable. Try to talk to the tenant, see what you're willing to work out. You'll find that most tenants are willing to pay a little more.
It's funny. There was actually a case at the board recently, which was for a unit that was post 2018, and in amongst all of the discussion that was had, the landlord had only applied guideline rent, and actually the adjudicator asked the question about, you realize you could have paid more, and he said yes, it's actually not worth the hassle to actually even try that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for some people and in some cases, landlords have done that. They just said, okay, let's do the guideline, regardless of the fact that I could ask for more than guideline.
Yeah.
Okay.
And to be quite honest, that actually with the guideline rent there, it's a lot easier to look it up and just say, and not have any hassle, less hassle for the landlord's perspective. Look up it's 2.1% this year, therefore your rent's going up by $7.76. Boom, done, right? And the tenant gets his calculator out, pushes a few numbers on it, says, oh, that's bang on right.
Yep. And this is what they do. Like in some areas, like in big cities, rent has gone over the last 3 years. They started to decline by about 4% on average.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like it's not going to decline to where it used to be. And I think there should be something where it could, because wages have not kept up with it.
Yep. Oh, yeah. And in fact, actually, that's one of the things about the rent, about when market rent anyway, because in fact, actually, we often talk about the fact that as a tenant leave your unit, you are now free to put up the rent by $500. But in fact, actually, market forces may mean that you're putting down the rent by $300.
Yeah, depending on how much I was charging you to begin with.
Exactly.
Like I can be charging $2,500 for a 2-bedroom, and I better reduce it by $300.
Yeah, because in fact I moved in 2022 when the peak of the prices were there, and now it's 2026, and the market doesn't command such a huge amount.
And part of this whole problem is why some people can't get housing or buy housing, is because they cannot save for the down payment because most of their money's going into rent.
Yeah.
So a lot of this stuff, they impact each other. It has this overall impact, a fall down effect.
Yeah, it does. Okay. Any further information about rental increases or rental deposits? Interest?
Other than that, people have questions or they're not sure about something, they can always call us and we can tell them whether this is a legal rent increase or whether this is an increase that you can fight, or whether this is something, or whether your unit is something that is likely to be not rent controlled. There's a number of things that we can look at. There's other exemptions too, such as board and care facilities and other types of exemptions that will control one part of your rent, part of the bill, but not the other. So, I mean, these are things that you have to be aware of, and that these are things where you need to bring that into our office if there's some control or some issue going on with your facilities.
Yeah,
and it's been a lot more comprehensive over the years with the rent controls. Like in the past, Landlord-Tenant Act did not cover, say, housing cooperatives. Yeah. Housing cooperatives their rent goes up whatever they voted on.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They do not go by landlord-tenant board.
Yeah. Okay.
They vote on it, and the thing is, but they also have rules that apply to housing cooperatives and how housing cooperatives can get rid of unruly members.
All right. And maybe we should talk about housing co-ops at another time.
Absolutely. Housing cooperatives are wonderful. I've lived in one for 17 years, and they can do a lot of good in the community.
All right. So if you need to contact Invictus Legal LLP, you can do so at 905-688-5598 or email Angela through angela@weareinvictus.legal or me through peter@weareinvictus.legal, or you can contact us through our website, weareinvictus.legal. And for the climax of the show.
Oh, yeah. So what you heard today on Spin Legal, whether this show or others in a series, this is not legal advice. Okay? And if you need legal advice, then please contact a paralegal or lawyer. Like there's different situations that we raise in the show that could apply to you or may not apply to you. Okay? But if you hear something that strikes a chord in this show or any of the others, okay, just give us a call and see what we can do for you. Okay? Because then we can address your situation specifically.
Yep. All right. And with that, I think it remains for me to say thank you for watching, and we'll be back in a week's time with another topic.
Yep.
Haven't yet decided what that topic is, but we'll chat after the show and figure it out then. All right. Yep. So have a great day, everybody, and enjoy the